I may go out tomorrow if I can borrow a coat to wear. Oh, I'd step out in style with my sincere smile and my dancing...
Hello, peoples of the tube! Now, as you may or may not remember, a while ago I made a video about the new Harry Potter film, which isn't very new now, it's a few months old. But I made a video after I went to see it, saying my general thoughts on it. And just recently I went to see another film, and I thought I would make a video about that as well. Now, see if you can guess what the film I went to see is. I'll give you a clue. I'm wearing the clue. Yes, of course it is The Muppets, the newest Muppet film, which is just called The Muppets because they obviously ran out of name ideas. But to be honest, I think the title is quite appropriate because it pretty much sums up what the film is about. Now, before I get started on the film itself, this is the closest you'll ever get to a review of any sort from me. I'm not serious enough a person to make proper reviews, but I shall attempt to review the Muppet film. But first, I would like to go over sort of a brief Muppety history with you. I can't guarantee that this will be very good as a history lesson, but I'm not good at such things. But here we go. Now, the Muppet Show, as a show itself, had sort of floated in. It didn't float in. It sort of started up. Generally, a sort of older version of sort of Sesame Street. Of course, made by the same people. Sesame Street did very well. They sort of made a similar-ish style of show for a slightly older audience, and it proved very popular because it was very, very good. And it did well enough to warrant making a film, which was known as The Muppet Movie. Now, back at this time, the Muppet Show, was still running when The Muppet Movie was made, and it did very well, The Muppet Movie, and it was a brilliant film. It's actually one of my favourite films ever. And then they went on to make a bit more of The Muppet Show, and eventually The Muppet Show ended, and I think around about the time it ended was when The Great Muppet Caper came out, which was another brilliant film, and again, one of my favourite films. You can see a bit of a pattern here. I do quite like The Muppets rather a lot. And so a few years later, they made a third one, which wasn't quite as good, but it was pretty decent. That would be the Muppets Take Manhattan. It kind of a rehash of the Muppet Movie, but not so much so. It was good though. It was a very good film. Again, one of my favourite films. I could tell you an interesting factoid that in early 2005, I could have recited the entire script of the whole movie from heart. From heart? I don't think that... from memory. I knew it by heart. I could have recited it from memory. That's the way it goes. Because I had attempted around about that time to watch it for 100 nights in a row. After about 53 nights, my parents started complaining to me that I was spending every night watching television. And then they found out that it was the same thing I watched over and over again. But it was worth it! Wow! So yes, and after that, there was a sort of TV special thing that they made around Christmas time. And then, sort of, tragedy struck. Jim Henson died. Then Richard Hunt also died very shortly afterwards. And they were kind of sort of, all of a sudden, how much? 40% of the original sort of Muppet performers cast was gone. But they didn't give up. They kept on going. They sort of recast the characters that they couldn't exactly get rid of. A lot of the characters, like Rolf, who was one of Jim Henson's favourites, and Scooter, who was Richard Hunt's best-known character, either remained silent in the case of Rolf or sort of disappeared entirely in the case of Scooter. And they kept going, and we got The Muppet Christmas Carol very shortly afterwards. And it was a brilliant film. It's one of the best Christmas films that there is. It's my favourite Christmas film. And then that was followed with The Muppet Treasure Island, which generally sort of isn't as popularly received with critics. I like it. I think it's quite a good film. It's quite fun. But yeah, so that came next, and it was pretty good. And then a few years later, in 1999, we had Muppets from Space. And again, I really like this film, but on the whole, it's not popular. I'm not sure why, but financially it didn't do well. And the reason for this is apparently they didn't I was too young to remember this at the time. But they didn't really advertise it much in advance, and they put it up. It was going to be put up, I think, in something like Christmas time, and then they changed their mind and put it up at Halloween or something like that. They sort of moved it forward a bit, which kind of got rid of the opportunity to advertise as much in advance. They had less time to sort of put the film out there and tell people, hey, new film coming out, exciting, wow. So, since the film didn't do so well, they ended up not making any more cinematic Muppet films. Although they did make a collection of made-for-TV movies. The first of which was It's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie, a title which is so ridiculous that I intend to never say it again in my life and shall henceforth refer to it as IVMMCM. Now, IVMMCM, it wasn't bad as such. It wasn't great either, and, you know, it was decent, I would say. It was decent, but it wasn't really quite as good as it could have been. Some of the ideas that they had in it were quite good. And then we had The Muppet Wizard of Oz. Yes, The Muppet Wizard of Oz. Have you seen that film? If not, you are very lucky. The Muppet Wizard of Oz was awful. It was so bad. It was awful. Oh, it really was appalling. It was at the same time too childish and too adult. That shouldn't be possible. But this film managed it, oh yes. The human actors that they had in it were bland, at best. The plot was silly, and it was sort of brought forward that the sort of idea was sort of a modern version of The Wizard of Oz. And so instead of going to seek a way home to find her aunt and stop her aunt from being so worried that she died, Dorothy's quest was to become famous. Which says a lot about society nowadays, doesn't it? So no, I didn't like The Muppet Wizard of Oz very much. I was thinking to myself, goodness me, the Muppets are really going down the hill. Is this all we've got to look forward to? There's more and more like this. I'm not even going to mention the cameo that Quentin Tarantino made. Well, I just did, but only to tell you that I'm not going to say any more about it because it was so awful. I know, apart from me saying it was awful just now as well. And there was a sort of short Christmas special. It wasn't long enough to be counted as a TV movie, but there's a Christmas special called Letters to Santa, which again, it was decent, but it wasn't anything to write home about. To see what I did there? And that wasn't even an intentional pun, but it was once I realised it was a pun, and said it three. Actually, that was the first take. Yes, moving on. So, when I heard that there was a new Muppet film going to be released, I was quite excited, but at the same time, I was thinking to myself, is this going to disappoint me as much as The Muppets Wizard of Oz did? Is this going to bomb? And this is the point where Crazy Harry comes in and blows me up, which you may or may not get as a reference, depending on how well you know the Muppets. But, yes, so I was apprehensive, but excited. I mean, mostly excited. I'd seen the trailers. The trailers looked good. And so finally we have reached the point where I talk about the film that I'm here to talk about. And did the Muppets sort of live up to what Muppets should be? Yes, it did! Well, actually, yes, it did, but higher pitched. The Muppets, I would say that The Muppets, the film, not the franchise, The Muppets as a film is probably the best film they've done since The Great Muppet Caper, the best anything they've done. And basically, I think where it gets its goodness from is it sort of goes back to sort of oldiness. That's not a word. There's a lot of sort of things that they have in it that have sort of faded into obscurity through the years. Like Uncle Deadly. You might not know who Uncle Deadly is. If you've seen the film, you will know who Uncle Deadly is, although he's mainly just referred to as Deadly. But Uncle Deadly, he has a very prominent role in it. He's sort of disappeared since the end of the Muppet Show. He was sort of like the phantom of the Muppet Show that sort of haunted the theatre. He's a brilliant character. But he just sort of disappeared. There was minimal use of Pepe. Pepe had about 2 minutes screen time. And I don't hate Pepe like some of the fans hate Pepe, but he's become too prominent. He only started being used in the show Muppets Tonight, which I didn't mention in my history of the Muppets, but it was like a little TV series. It was quite good. That came in between Treasure Island and Muppets from Space. And ever since that film was released, a lot of the sort of main characters that were introduced in that had become very main Muppet characters, sometimes overshadowing the usual main characters, if you understand what I mean. But this film sort of countered that. Bobo had a role, Bobo the Bear. I like Bobo. He had a sort of role as the other henchman to the bad guy, because Uncle Deadly was one of the bad guy's henchmen. I'm going to try not to give too much away, but you must have seen this film by now, at least. It's a brilliant film. And Pepe made a brief appearance in it, and Big Mean Carl was in the background, but you can't really criticise Big Mean Carl being there, because he didn't do anything in it. But on the whole, it was mainly sort of, focusing on the original Muppet cast, and a lot of the characters that had sort of disappeared or become silent, as I mentioned, Rolf and Scooter, had pretty much vanished from the face of Muppetiness. Rolf was there, but he was always in very small, brief roles and never saying anything. But he had a fairly reasonable role this time, and he had quite a few lines. And Scooter, Yes, I shall talk now about Scooter as a character. Because in the time between Richard Hunt passing away and now, his character had first disappeared, then been brought back in the late 90s, only to be recast and passed around like a bad stump thing, and he'd never really gotten a sort of consistent person doing his voice, which is never a good thing. Because if a character's not got sort of a steady performer, he's not going to sort of grow as a character, because Scooter, over the years that he was in it, did sort of grow, and, you know what, he grew with his performer. But, you know, he'd been passed around. There were about 6 different people playing him over however many appearances he'd made in it. And the latest person to play him was David Rudman. And last time David Rudman had done him, because he'd been performing him since about 2008-ish, and he'd played the part in the film, well, not the film, the TV special, Muppets Letters to Santa. And I hadn't been entirely convinced that he was all that good at it. I mean, I don't know, because Ricky Boyd, who did them in the Muppet Wizard of Oz, was quite possibly the only thing I liked about the Muppet Wizard of Oz, was that, you know, Scooter was done quite well in it, and he had quite a big role, because I like Scooter, he's one of my favourite characters. But no, Ricky Boyd did a good job, and then David Rudman came in for Letters to Santa, and I wasn't convinced, I'll be honest. But he really seems to have got the hang of the character in that time, the 3 years since that was made. He sort of, it's good, yeah. I would say he's now the best person to have sort of taken on the role of Scooter, and apparently he's now going to be the regular performer for Scooter, which I am very happy about, because he's very, very good at it. On the whole, with the Muppet characters, there's a lot of the original cast. The ones that haven't died have almost all retired. The only one of the original 5 main performers that we still have working on the Muppets is Dave Goells, who's best known as Gonzo, but also does Bunsen Honeydew and Beauregard amongst his original characters, and has taken on the role of Waldorf since Jim Henson passed away. But the rest, the new people, well, I say new people, like Steve Whitmire was working on the Muppets since, I think he was working on it before the Muppet Show finished. He was originally, well, the original, he's the only voice of Rizzo, and he had a few sort of little characters he was given, but he was given Kermit after Jim Henson died, and he's brilliant. I mean, you know, he's been doing the character obviously for 20 years now, so he's a master of Kermit. I think there's no one better that could have taken on Kermit after Jim Henson. And I think particularly worthy of note is Matt Vogel, who has taken on all of Jerry Nelson's characters since Jerry Nelson retired. He's very, very good. I'm quite pleased with, I mean, I wasn't sure to start with. He doesn't sound like Jerry Nelson. Jerry Nelson has a very distinctive voice when he's doing the voices of the characters. But although you can't quite hear the Jerry Nelsoniness in the Matt Vogel characters, they're very good. I'm very impressed with how he's doing them. He's got Uncle Deadly is one of them, and it's good. It's very good. Speaking of Jerry Nelson, I was quite impressed to hear that he actually did make a very small cameo appearance, and I say here because it was only his voice that was in it. There's a sort of announcer at the start of this big Muppet telethon, and the announcer is Jerry Nelson, which is nice, because it's nice to have things like that in it. Now, overall, and I've rambled about things that you don't care at all about, that I do, I'm going to talk a bit about the plot, because it's a good plot, it's quite interesting. Sort of the basic premise, which, you know, I'm not going to spoil anything that the advert doesn't really spoil, but it's about this, well, he's a Muppet himself, but he's not an official Muppet, and he's a Muppet fan, a Muppet who's a fan of the Muppets, and he wants to go and meet Kermit, and he goes to the Muppet Studios. He finds out that there's no, you know, it's not really properly in operation anymore, the Muppets, and there's some villain that's got a plot to tear down the Muppet Theatre and Muppet Studios to drill for oil. Now, it's in this plot element that, unfortunately, the film does kind of take a lot of plot out of IVM MCM, and I don't really mind so much, because this film does the whole sort of raising money and time to stop an evil, financially driven villain from taking their theatre away from them. It takes that plot in a much better way, I think. Although I can't help but quite frequently think to myself, it kind of a reused plot there. But it was good. And as a character, I think I could really relate to Walter as a Muppet, because he had a lot of things. So he was a big Muppet fan. I'm not a huge Muppet fan, but I mean, like, he wore a Kermit t-shirt for quite a bit of the film, and you know, he had lots and lots of Muppety things. I have lots of Muppety things. I have lots of Muppety things. Lots of Muppety things. I mean, I certainly don't have as many Muppety things as Walter did, but I do have a fair few Muppety things. Now, the last sort of half an hour of the film is basically just an episode of The Muppet Show, which again quite appealed to me because, you know, The Muppet Show is kind of where The Muppets started, and it's very nice. Amongst the songs, which I will point out, the music in this film is brilliant. The opening number is a bit tedious, but overall enjoyable. The sort of very sort of touching, moving song, touching and moving song, which Kermit sings, which I must say I was rather moved and touched by. There's also in the Muppet Showy segment, they have a variety of sort of songs that they're singing for it, including the song Rainbow Connection from the Muppet movie. As I've mentioned, the Muppet movie is my favourite Muppet film, and hearing this song again, it was so nice, and it was just so nicely done. It was really, that was another of the moving parts. The sort of most moving parts of the film was that, and Pictures in My Head that Kermit sang. I recommend, I mean, if you've not seen the film and you're not planning on watching the film, well, actually no, in that case you probably don't care. But I recommend listening to those songs. They're very good. They're on the soundtrack of the like, you can listen to them on YouTube. And another song, which happens to be my favourite bit in terms of funniness, this is like, I just find this hilarious. They do a barbershop quartet version of Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. While at the same time sort of giving Jack Black a shave and a haircut, and sort of he's tied up. So I won't tell you why he's tied up, but he's shouting, "Oh, stop it! No, what are you doing? You're ruining one of the greatest songs of all time!" Oh, it's a very funny bit. I recommend that bit. If you go to see the film and you want to have your eyes closed from talking nonsense. Sorry, I've rambled on more than long enough. Basically, this film is brilliant. It's the best film to have been made in the last, I don't know, when was Muppets? Last 30 years. Best film in the last 30 years. But certainly the best Muppet film in the last 30 years. Very enjoyable. And, you know, I'm hoping that sort of this will pave the way, because supposedly it's done very, very well, which is understandable. Hopefully it's going to pave the way for sort of new, more Muppety things, because, I mean, 12 years without a Muppet film in the cinema is a very long time to go. I mean, we've had the TV films, but like I said, they were mediocre and awful in that order. So that's pretty much my little review of The Muppets. I hope this has given you some sort of helpful information. I did ramble a lot. But anything you get from that, if you take a message away from this, the message is, go and see The Muppets. It is brilliant. I left the cinema and I said, like, about 80 times, wow, that was the best film ever. Then someone that I know that I'd said this to several times is, oh, I don't think this film will be very good. I'm not going to see that film. I won't say who it is, although the impersonation might make it a bit obvious. Anyway, this person went to see The Muppets about a week after I did. And, like, straight away afterwards, I had him on the phone saying, oh, that was the best film ever! Because, to be honest, it is the best film ever. Anyway, I think that's enough talking about the film. You get it. It's a good film. I enjoyed it more than I've enjoyed any film I've been to see at the cinema. I don't think I've been to the cinema and watched a film and enjoyed it as much as that. And I've enjoyed a lot of films at the cinema that I've seen. And I've seen lots of films at the cinema that I haven't enjoyed, but actually not very many, only one or two. So yes, before I finish though, I want to bring up a small thing. My video, Exterminate Regenerate, I don't know if you'll remember this one, it was one of the ones I made in the summer. And for a very long time its view count has been stuck at 305 views. But all of a sudden it seems to be getting views again. It's gone up to about 340, I think. So, yeah, I recommend going to go and see it again, since that's happening, and get the view count up a bit, because I suspect I did watch it a lot myself, and I think that might be where the view count shot up and then stopped. And I think YouTube does a thing where they, after about 300 views or so, they sort of think, better make sure that they're all coming from, you know, not all coming from the same person, which I think a lot of them were. So now that that's sort of, we've obviously 305, we've passed that in actual views. So, I mean, I recommend watching it. I'm going to put a link to it there. And I'd like, you know, it is my favourite video that I've made. It's nothing to do with what I'm saying just now. So, I don't know. Watch it anyway, because it is my favourite video I've made. But yes, so I hope you've enjoyed this informative and rambling review. I certainly hope you go and see The Muppets because it is the best film. Other than that, thank you for watching and have a nice day.
Am I a man or am I a Muppet?
Am I a Muppet?
If I'm a Muppet, well, I'm a very manly Muppet.
Very manly Muppet.
Am I a Muppet or am I a man?
Am I a man?
If I'm a man, that makes me a Muppet of a man.
A Muppet of a man.
And now I shall eat this rubber tire to the tune of Flight of the Bumblebee. That's not in the film.